Joining us now are John Howland, NBC News and MSNBC national affairs analyst and host of the Hell and High Water podcast from The Recount. Also with us, Alex Wagner, contributing writer at The Atlantic. Both are co-hosts and executive producers of Showtime's The Circus. Alex Wagner, let me begin with you. Things just got complicated for both the House of Representatives and the Senate because the Senate parliamentarian has ruled that you cannot include the minimum wage increase in the Senate bill. That means in the end it's not going to be in the legislation, but the House is going to vote tomorrow, according to Nancy Pelosi, on a version of the bill that includes the minimum wage. What happens next?
I think that no matter what happens, progressive Democrats aren't giving up on this. Bernie Sanders has said he may try and tweak the language and change this so that large corporations will not get tax credits and tax write-offs if they do not pay their workers more than $15 an hour. That's his kind of end run around this. I think that's probably unlikely to be in final passage. Who actually knows? But I spent the day on the Hill with House progressives, and they're saying, look, if this isn't in the final Recovery Act, if this isn't in the final relief bill, we are going to pass a standalone raising of the federal minimum wage. And there are two goals in that, Lawrence. One is to actually raise the federal minimum wage, and the other is to abolish the filibuster, which is actually the shiny apple at the end of this road for progressives as much as the federal minimum wage. House progressives believe that if they have a standalone bill to raise the federal minimum wage, they will pass it, they will send it to the Senate, and then the question will be on the front doorstep of our political system. Do we abide by the rules of the filibuster, which would kill that federal minimum wage raise, or do we actually use that moment, this inflection point, to abolish the filibuster, which is something that the Biden administration has been asked about, which is something Democrats would like to do? This fight is going to lead to an even bigger fight over one of the biggest procedural hurdles to passing major progressive legislation in the Biden era.
John Hyman, it sounds like Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer have to swerve away from that fight because we know how it will turn out. The filibuster would not be overturned. There would not be 50 votes for that. And the way to do it is to make as fast a move as they can on a plan for including the minimum wage in something like a defense spending bill, a so-called must-pass bill. The Congress has must-pass bills, and that's how they raised it last time. That's how they're going to raise it the next time. That's the only way they're ever going to raise it, is put it in something that Republicans have to vote for.
Yeah, well, and something that the parliamentarian will rule is that if we get around this issue of trying to put it in reconciliation and therefore leaving it at the whim, not the whim, but at the discretion of the parliamentarian. And I think, Alex is putting her finger on one of the fundamental disjunctures that's both between there's an ideological disjuncture between moderates and progressives in the Democratic caucus, also one that's a disjuncture between the House and the Senate, right? There's no one in the world more frustrated with the Senate, and particularly with the parliamentarian at this moment, but with Senate moderates than House progressives in the Democratic caucus. And the reality, as you point out, Lawrence, is that there are not enough votes to pass the minimum wage, a minimum wage hike to $15 with Democratic reluctance in the Senate. There's not enough votes in the Senate to overturn the filibuster. So the question does become, how do they find another way to get the minimum wage hike overwhelmingly popular around the country? Whether that number is $15 or something slightly below that, is there some other vehicle? And I think that is where Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden are going to go. Because actually, when it comes down to it, Joe Biden doesn't have the stomach to try to overturn the filibuster. Maybe even if he had the votes, I'm not sure Joe Biden would be for that. So I think that's what we're going to get, is the solution that you just laid out.
Yeah, I'm completely in favor of getting rid of all of the filibuster rules, but I know the votes aren't there to do it. In the meantime, Alex, the enthusiasm for passing what they can pass is the challenge for Joe Biden and the Speaker and Chuck Schumer to maintain. And Joe Biden's statement tonight was, I respect the ruling of the parliamentarian. And then he went on to stress everything else in this bill that is great, the $1,400 checks and the COVID vaccine help, all of the other things that are worth voting for. And that's going to be his message for the next 24 hours and beyond.
Absolutely. And, I think that the wisdom you hear from Democrats on the Hill both moderate and progressive, is we're not going to let perfect be the enemy of the good here. The package is $1.9 trillion in funding that touches so many aspects of the American economy. I don't think there's a single Democrat who doesn't want to see it passed, not just because ideologically it dovetails with their entire agenda, but because they believe that they have the vast support of the American public, including Republicans. I was talking to House leadership, and they marvel at the fact that Republicans won't vote for this. They look at the very naked reality that Americans are going to get checks for $1,400. Donald Trump understood what a political gift that was to the party that passes it. That's why he wanted his party to do it. The fact that the Republicans won't play ball on this, that they're going to have no fingerprints on stimulus checks that are going to go to American families along with earned income tax credits, child tax credits. The average family of four could get $10,000 in stimulus checks and in tax credits. That is a major boon. That is not something American voters forget, and that is why you have seen such remarkable unity from the Democratic caucus on both ends of the spectrum on this. They will pass this bill. They will pass this bill.
Nobel Prize-winning economist Paul Krugman was on with Rachel in the last hour. He also happens to be politically liberal. He's in favor of everything in this bill, including the minimum wage hike. Rachel asked him, with the minimum wage hike removed from the bill, how good is the bill? And here is what Paul Krugman said.
This is I'm kind of almost pinching myself. I can't believe that we're about to get a bill that is as good. It's not perfect, and especially, I missed that minimum wage, but that we're about to get a bill that's as good as it appears we're going to get.
Joe Heilman, Nancy Pelosi might be inviting Paul Krugman to speak to the Democratic caucus on this if they have to eventually vote on final passage on a bill that doesn't have the minimum wage increase.
Yeah, I mean, and you point the right way, Lawrence. I mean, Alex, points out that right now there's a lot of enthusiasm for the bill. There has been. It's been kind of amazing how the Biden administration, with a bill this big, that normally would have a lot of political risks for a lot of Democrats, they've managed to get to this place where they have this overwhelming public support. They've had a unified caucus in the House. They have mostly unity in the Senate on the key elements, aside from the minimum wage, on everything else, right? Things have been going so well. In the same way that Paul Krugman's pinching himself over how good the bill is, a lot of people in the Biden White House are pinching themselves over how flawlessly this is all unfolded for them on the political side until this parliamentarian ruling. And I think for their goal, in terms of the messaging, and Paul Krugman helps them with this, is just everybody keep your eye on the ball here. Don't get in the weeds on these questions. Look, minimum wage is super important, but again, to Alex's phrase, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and keep this level of enthusiasm, keep this momentum going. The notion in politics that good gets better and bad gets worse, right? Keep building on, get these points on the board right now, get that momentum going forward, get this bill done, $1.9 trillion, and lay down a template for the next thing you want to do, a $3 trillion infrastructure bill. Don't trip over your own shoelaces on the way to that. And I think that they have a pretty good chance of getting that done. Democrats often can get a little distracted enough in the weeds. I don't think that there's a high risk of that right now. I do think, as Alex said, there's a lot of focus and a lot of concentration on how important it is to get this bill passed. And on the merits, as Krugman lays out, it's a strong bill.
The co-stars of Sunday night's must-watch Showtime's The Circus, Alex Wagner and John Heilemann, thank you for joining us tonight. And John, thank you tonight for being in a hotel where your window tells us exactly where you are for once.
I brought it for you, Lawrence. I brought it tonight.
Thank you.
There you go.
And I know which hotel that is. Thank you very much. Coming up.